Greetings everyone and welcome to our Global Leading Voices webinar campaign. My name is Hana Tahire and I am the Portfolio Marketing Manager for Health, Safety and Environment. I will be the host for today's webinar on 5 top tips for implementing a successful safety culture in global organizations, where we will discuss about why it is important to implement a safety culture. The presenter of today's webinar will be Cathy Hansell, who is the President of Breakthrough Results. Cathy has over 30 years of experience in health, safety, and environment, holding various senior leadership roles at several international corporations. At the end of the presentation, we will have a question and answer session. Therefore, I highly encourage you to submit any questions or comments you may have during this webinar in the chat box of your control panel. Thank you for your attention, and I hope you will get insightful information from this webinar. Please, Cathy, you may begin with the presentation.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Hana. And welcome, everyone. I'm very honored to be one of the PACB guest speakers in their webinar series. Before we begin, I wanted to say Happy World Water Day. Yes, March 22nd is a day around the world where we're supposed to have a reminder of the situation of our availability of clean water around the world and what we can do either as a company or personally to conserve water, maybe ways we can stop its excessive or wasteful use, different processes, different accessibilities, helping ensure people around the world do have clean water and cleaning up the water that may be polluted right now. So again, thank you for being here, and let's get back to our agenda, and thank you for meeting with me this morning. Yes, I do have actually over 35 years experience, and it's a real pleasure to be here, and I will share with you what I've learned, the most important learnings. The title is called 5 Top Tips, but before we get to those tips, I want to talk about safety culture itself so that the tips make the most sense. So we're going to get started. So our agenda today is really talking about safety culture in and of itself, its definitions, and some myth busting. Or at least I'd like to give you a different way of thinking about some things that you may be hearing and different ways of analyzing what may be acceptable theories or beliefs regarding safety. Also, in my experience, what are the benefits of a successful culture and really how do you do it? Then we'll get into the tips. I'll also share with you some traps. I'm pretty transparent and honest, so I'll tell you if I made mistakes, I'll tell you what those are too, so that you don't experience those either, and ways that I've been able to address some challenges and barriers. So let's get started. So first we're going to look at a little bit about safety culture itself. I would imagine that everyone on the line, you probably have your own definitions and thoughts about what culture is. For me, it's a common set of values and beliefs. It guides the processes, actions, and decisions within an organization to that common goal, whatever that culture is and how it's defined. The culture itself also defines really the organization's identity, values, and character. It's a tremendous, powerfully, and very influential draw within the company because it really provides a background and actually a blueprint of what's considered acceptable safety actions, safety behaviors, and safety results. Very important, and what I've experienced is this culture creates a unifying sense of purpose and direction. And then if we can create that, and that's my purpose today, is to share with you how I've been able to do this, it can lead to superior safety performance and injury prevention, but can also lead to other business value. So in that way, safety culture goes way beyond regulatory compliance. If it's embedded within the organization and within the processes and thoughts and engages every person, you're able to find benefits in productivity, quality, morale, teamwork, lots of other business aspects. It creates new business value too. So if you look at that, and we'll accept that as kind of the definition of what we're trying to strive for here, a common set of values, and which will be used as a blueprint against all other processes and actions and behaviors, and is embedded in the organization, then we can talk about how to do it. So from there we look at why bother, basically. And here you see reasons for world-class safety. World-class is it's an older term, but certainly valued and valuable as just describing what's superior and lasting. Okay, so if you accept that, again, based on what may be best practices around the world in different industries. So world class doesn't necessarily mean the best within the pharma industry or the best within the chemical industry or the best within construction industry. It's the best. So if we look at the expectation for it, the best, we can look at what's considered a moral obligation, certainly required by our employees. Everybody wants to come to work and expecting not to get hurt, but quite a branding factor for employee attraction, and as well as a satisfaction factor for retention, and then also leads to better performance. And I'll get to some of that later on about some of the consequences of a great safety performance and the culture itself. So other than required by the employees, it's even required and expected broader. Sustainability, I don't know how many people are engaged in sustainability right now, but it is a foundation of sustainability, and I'll get into that a little bit later too. But the ways in which safety, and safety, health, and environment, but here we're talking about safety today, really dovetails beautifully with all of the sustainability requirements, and you can look at that as whether it's ESG requirements or whether it's out of Dow Jones Sustainability Index or whether it's out, oh my gosh, there's so many systems and rating systems, GRI. They all have safety within them, and not necessarily only safety questions, but much more importantly, a much more mature view of the situation is to say all the processes and the expectation of leadership engagement and leadership drive, employee engagement, integration within the business, that's a hallmark of safety culture. So I'm going to talk about in just a minute, and I won't get into great detail today because we don't have time in this, but I'll continue to offer to anyone on the line, if you would like to talk in more detail about anything that I'm talking about, you'll have my contact information, and I would be glad to do that. So back to here, a moral obligation, yes, required by society, required by the public, required by our customers, required by supply chain, required by the public, and of course required by our employees. If that's not enough, then we go on to the business itself. And then we look at all these different aspects of how safety and a great safety performance can bring great business value. And looking at controlling costs, which is medical costs, legal costs, work process, repair, equipment, replacement of injured employees, very direct costs and indirect costs of accidents. When safety is working well, it does lead to productivity, efficiency, quality, morale. It's a view of do it right the first time. So it's not a matter of safety is our #1 priority. It's a matter of we operate safely. That's a very different view of how safety is embedded in an organization and expectations of safety. And when that happens, and I've experienced this, and I'll share this with you at the end, I hope I have time for a couple, at least 1 or 2 case studies. The morale is up, productivity is up, teamwork is up, business results are up, efficiencies are up, costs are down. So it's definitely an attribute of a successful business and the value that safety can bring. All of that combined creates a competitive advantage, including new value-added products and services that safety can deliver. So if we're looking at those 3 factors, they really create a foundation for why is safety important in a business and the value that it brings not only to its employees but broader to customers and even broader to stakeholders. And if you want to take it 1 step broader, and there's sustainability sitting there. So it's the reach within the company and much broader outside the company bounds. Again, if we do look at the requirements that are in very common frameworks and rating systems, up to 80% of those requirements are met by actually 70% are met by a strong safety culture, and when you add environment, it ups it to 80%. So we have an enormous role as a safety health and environmental professionals in an organization's not only business success, as you can see here, but under this new sustainability umbrella that probably most of your organizations are embarking upon. And I close with the business value And I've experienced this, and I'm going to share this with you, and it's the most rewarding thing I think I've ever been through in my career so far, is to see the power of a safety culture at work. And that uniting sense of purpose and force and direction just ignites an organization. And it begins when it's done well. And I'm going to share with you what I've done in my experience to have it done well. It creates a flywheel of success. Small successes breed onto itself and create larger successes, and the organization grows and is successful. Not only because of safety, obviously, there's so many other aspects of a well-run business, but safety in many cases is a catalyst for getting the employees engaged, getting their hearts and minds. You may hear that all the time. You may say that, and it's true. So yes, these are the reasons that we're concerned about safety, whether we want to call it world-class safety or not. So if we believe that, and we want to achieve that, which I would assume you do, what are the characteristics in order to achieve those kind of goals and results? These are just a few. And you can see the simple diagram here, which leads from compliance all the way up to world-class safety. In order to have this happen, probably the biggest characteristic of this progression is that there is a safety culture within an organization. And one of the myths that, or at least a different way of thinking I'd like to offer you is, I believe, yes, there is such a thing as a safety culture. Some people say that there isn't, but in analyzing, I'd say the arguments about no, there is no safety culture, it comes right back to integration. So yes, there is a safety culture. And I'll share with you the definition of what it is and visions and strategies in order to be successful so that you can achieve these other characteristics and you can achieve what was on our previous slide of all the great results from it. I think that as you look at this, go down to the third bullet, you see multi-level leadership drive, yes, of course, and a good leader or leadership levels and management are creating roles and targets, accountabilities. More important, or maybe certainly just equally important, leadership is creating processes that enable people to be successful in what you're looking at and how you define a safety culture. That means where safety is embedded within the organization. And if you look at integrated and aligned with business processes, I've been doing this particular piece for 20 years. And within those 20 years, I've identified 24 business processes that must have safety incorporated into them. That's the hallmark of a culture. So yes, there is a culture, and that is the #1 criteria, I think, for making it last. Leaders come and go, right? But when it's integrated and aligned within the business and the business processes and what's considered acceptable and unacceptable in actions and behaviors and results, a leader can come and go. And it will influence it slightly, but it's embedded. And it's extremely hard to disrupt it once it's embedded in the organization. And we're looking at consistency, we're looking at prevention, and by virtue of having it integrated, again, right now we're looking at characteristics. So these things that I've shared with you here make it work and give you the results that you want. So to me, one of the most exciting aspects of this, and it's also the most challenging, is this integration piece. Because if you're successful, and I've done it several times, and I know you can do it too, you must talk with the business owners. So, and I'm going to share those with you in just a few minutes. But think about all the things that churn all the time in your business and how safety is impacted or does impact those processes. That's what this is about. And then I think the other point that I would like to just emphasize here is system-based root cause. And this also gets perhaps to another myth I'd like to bust, or again, at least give you a different way of thinking about it. Some people believe that most accidents are caused by employees, and because of that belief, their solution to that is that they go right after the employees. And they look at them for, well, we're just going to train you more, or we're going to give you more procedures to follow, and we're going to do some discipline, and we're going to up the accountabilities, and therefore you won't get hurt again. That is the most insane thing I've ever heard. I'm sorry. It's just ridiculous. Because a person an employee works in that world of all those processes. Remember, I shared with you, there are 24 processes churning all the time. So you plop an employee into the middle of an operation, now they've got 24 sets of things that are going to be impacting them. On top of it, the actions of their own peers and the actions of their supervisors. So there's so much impacting an employee's choice of a safe or unsafe act. A good root cause looks for those. Now some people say, well, I rely on Heinrich. I don't know if you've heard of him, probably most safety people have. Heinrich back in the 20s, actually we did it in the 30s. He analyzed a bunch of cases, thousands actually, from the 20s. And he came up with what we abbreviate as the 90-10. Well, he actually had 88, 10, and 2. So he attributed of all the incidents that he looked at, accidents, didn't do incidents, that were related to unsafe acts, 88%, unsafe conditions, 10%, which was just some, he said, a machinery kind of issue, and then 2%, which were kind of unexplained. And he defined the unsafe acts as unsafe performance of people, such as standing under suspended loads in horseplay and removal of safeguards. Okay. Yes, but because it was an unsafe act and a person was involved, that does not equate to the cause. So if I leave you with a few things, this is one of them. Actually, the one before with integration, I'm going to go through that in detail for you because it's so essential to a safety culture. And the other one is this point, that unsafe acts do not equate to the cause. And a good root cause looks for the whole circumstances around what happened. Yes, an employee or somebody did something. Of course they did, or else it wouldn't be an incident, right? Somebody did something. That doesn't mean that they are the cause of it. It means that let's look at the circumstances around them that influence that. How is work designed and planned and manned and scheduled and the layouts? You know, did they get enough training? I mean, you know all the different circumstances that can impact that. That's what we need to find in a good root cause. That's the basis, and that's our best hope for the best kind of solutions that we can have. It's not more procedures and not more training and not more discipline. It's looking at the whole picture. Now, maybe there are cases, and in my experience, again, I've been doing this a long, long time, I'm looking at 1, 2, 3% of incidents are truly an action of an employee that they just cannot explain, that they had an unsafe choice, where nothing else impacted them. That's the other important point to remember here. So I wanted to digress and go into this in detail because these are some of the quintessential aspects of characteristics of an organization that will enable you to have the kind of culture that you want. So I hope that this was, again, my hope is that as safety leaders, or I don't know who's on the call here, it could be operational leaders and HR leaders, and I hope you are on this call too because, my goodness, we all need to work together and team together for superior safety. But recognize that we each have this role, and I'm going to go into integration in a minute, and then I'm going to not go into any more in the root cause piece, but I hope that I gave you something different to think about than you might already of merely getting into what happened to the employee did something and therefore they are to blame, and then the solutions are centered around that, as opposed to looking at what's really going on in the business, what's really going on in the workplace. Okay, so with all of that, now what's needed? How do we get there? How do we get those characteristics? How do we get these kind of benefits? These are the things that need to basically change. And at the heart of these, I'm not going to go through each one of these, you can read them for yourself. Some of them are bolded, and it's not surprising which ones are bolded because I just spent some time sharing with you my views of system-based consistent root causes, prevention, that's our best chance rather than reaction running around. I hope that people on the line are thinking about prevention and not enjoying or even proud of the fact that they're running around firefighting. That's a very, very old traditional view of what we can do, and I hope you're not there. I hope you're spending your time looking at prevention. And with that comes lots of leading indicators, and I can go through those. But there you are at the bottom. You see that integration and alignment there, and I'm going to spend a good amount of time on that because that's really our best hope and our best sets of actions. Yes, we need the leaders. So you start at the top. Yeah, we're not looking to just save ourselves from compliance problems and fines and penalties. Yes, this is a corporate responsibility, and yes, our leaders have an absolutely critical role in this. Our job as safety people to make sure that they understand that and do what's on this list. That's our job. And at the bottom, safety is not a priority. And again, maybe this is another different way I offer you to think about something that may be very commonly heard or said. But in my experience, safety is more than a priority because priorities shift every day based on what's going on. Don't let that happen. And we can't let that happen. So our way to do this is we create this culture. And I'm going to define that for you in a second, where safety becomes a value. So there we are. We're going to build a safety culture. We're going to define it. We're going to build a strategy to it, just like every other aspect of a well-run business. We're going to have a roadmap of what to do, how to do it. We're going to follow a logical change model. We will not be swept into silver bullets. And we're going to be following a logical change model, which I'll share with you, where you build interest, you build championships, you build a powerful, I'll call it guiding coalition, where you've got support and you get the right people on the bus, and then you start working hard, and you track yourself with leading indicators. So these are some of the things about how to build it. And the first is a definition, and this is probably one of the most important things I can share with you personally, because after so many years of working with organizations and building what is or have been proven successful safety cultures, here's the definition, and it is thorough and it's complete and it's inclusive of the things that must be in place. And we do start with the leaders for sure. Our leaders need to know and understand what their role is. So how do we help our leaders do that? That's our job. We need to help our leaders become the change agents and catalysts for superior safety that we want them to be. And one thing I hope you don't do is criticize your leaders, because our leaders, they know what they know, and they have risen through the ranks of whatever organization they've come from based on the skill sets and results that they've achieved there. Whether safety was part of that or not, now you've got a leader. You're looking face to face at this person. And we owe it to them to help them understand what's necessary in order to really drive successful safety. And I'll talk a little bit about that, but I'm not going to go into depth. And again, I'll offer, if people are having questions or trouble kind of getting their leaders on board, or having that great face-to-face discussion, please let me know, and I can help you with that. But the bottom line is, with the leaders need to prove it, right? They need to demonstrate, yes, I care about people. Yes, I want to close out what I see. Yes, I take safety seriously. It's not just talk. I have an open door. I want to hear what you have to say. I enable and empower my organization to find and fix what's going on from a safety perspective. And I consider it just as important and a value. So whether we have great productivity and lousy safety, that's not acceptable. We're going to produce safety safely. So there's the 2-minute of what a good leader does. From an employee perspective, meaningful engagement. Meaningful means respectful. We don't want to have employees engage and go painting lines in the parking lot kind of thing. This is, how do we really train and request our employees to help us see what you see and help us understand what you're working with all the time, what's in your way in order to work safely. You know, what are the challenges that you have? What are the barriers you have? What are your frustrations? Please, we need you. That's the speech to every single employee. And again, it's not only the people within operations or technicians out in the field. That's where many of the accidents occur, but that's not where the solutions lie, right? The solutions, we talked about that, and it gets into the next bullet, that we want to be integrating safety into the business processes, and there's 24, and I promise you, I'm going to be showing them to you. It's those other business owners that we need to get to. So employee, think of employee very broadly. Every person who works for an organization is an employee, even the senior most leaders. They're an employee. So how do we get every single person involved to understand their critical role and to have ownership of their role, ownership of their own safety, say so if there's an issue, and please be involved and help us solve these problems. All of this is tracked by, I'll say, leading metrics and a very aggressive data analysis. I shared with you my view of a good root cause, and it's been successful for a long time. So I'm looking for defects. What Hannah didn't share with you, my background is I've got multiple degrees. I've got one in engineering, one in toxicology, and I'm also a lawyer. But I've got 9 certifications, and they're all in safety and manufacturing quality. So I think process-oriented. I think of defects, and safety risks that exist are defects. How do we get rid of the defects? Well, you build it in. So that's the third bullet. How do I get this done? Number 2, I ask for people who actually know a lot more than I do, and I track it, how successful I am with really good root cause, and I keep looking for those system defects. All of this combined is driven by leaders. I hope this makes sense to you. These 4 elements have been successful to drive cultures in 2 organizations in which I've worked for, and 3 or 4 organizations in which I've worked as a consultant, helping them help themselves to get this done. So all of that sounds great. It's a lot of work, and I'm not going to sugarcoat anything here. This is a lot of work, but boy, is it worth it. And recognize that the culture alone is that little red circle at the bottom there, and it must be supported strategically in a framework that's broader than just culture. I've experienced this, you may have too, where you do all that great stuff that we just talked about, and you still don't come out where you want to. It could be because maybe the resources and the safety and health leaders that you have are not adequate, or maybe your processes aren't strong enough. All 3 of these pieces are absolutely critical for you to succeed and for that culture to succeed. So I hope, again, I'm hoping I'm giving you things to think about, that when people say, oh, my culture is not working, well, is it complete enough, and is it supported by a complete strategy? Up at the top, leaders, that's really us from a safety, health, or safety, health, and environmental perspective. Do we have all the skills we need? Or yes, of course, technical skills, but you know what, almost more important, do we have the interpersonal skills? Do we have the leadership skills? Do we have the personal courage to say what's not popular, to address the status quo, to say it's not okay, to say this is the way we always do it. In fact, that's terrible, because we're condoning things that we can change, and there are risks out there that are unaddressed. And where do you sit if you're a safety and health person within your organization? Are you buried within a couple levels? Do you report to the highest level of the organization, whatever that organization may be? If not, strive to do that. And I know it's easier said than done, because believe me, I've been there. But it's high up. If you don't report, then have communication links, so that you are heard, you are at the table, and you're raising all of these important issues that, and they can get addressed by people who aren't you, right? We don't own any of those 24 business processes. We don't run a business, but all the people who do need to hear us, and we need to educate them. That's our job. That's our role. From a process perspective, how preventative, how proactive, you have the basic foundations in place. You know, usually there's 7 critical procedures or programs in place from a safety perspective. You know, hearing prevention, HAZCOM, hazardous energy, lockout, tagout, confined space entry, fall protection, fleet, especially if you're a service organization, your fleet is critical, DOT compliance, and that we want to make sure it's safe driving and respiratory protection. If you manage warehouses and DCs, distribution centers, and PIVs, power industrial vehicles, mules, cherry pickers, 4 trucks, they're critical for you. So do you know what's critical for you? And are you on top of that? And you have those procedures well in place? Does everybody train and understand those? And you've got whatever permits or pre-job reviews you need in place to make sure that those things are going to be followed. Basic foundation. Then you then take a step down into, now you're into prevention. And do you have what I always call find and fix exercises going on? More preventative, FMEAs, remote effects analysis, JSAs, the what-if scenarios. Are those in place so that you can be ahead of the curve all the time? And are you involved when there's organization changes that are going on, consolidations, rifts, new lines coming in, area consolidations, expansions? Do you know that? So you can begin to lay out what's necessary from a safety perspective. So again, you're looking at preventing accidents, preventing risks, of course, and then having that awareness and the mindset so that hopefully you can prevent an injury. And how aligned are you? I talked about sitting at the table. Do you have a management system in place? And is it linked with new product development, new process changes? If you've got Six Sigma Lean going on in your organizations, are you linked in with those quality people and those engineers that are making the changes so that you can guide, yes or no, this is safe or unsafe? Are you linked and guide with your HR professionals so that when they're making all the choices, and believe me, they control a great deal of what goes on in an organization. Are you partnering with them? These are processes that you own. So from a safety world, we have great influence in what's looked at as process. And then we feed into culture. So again, I hope I'm giving you different things to look at and think about. And that culture in and of itself does not survive well because it needs to be supported by us as resources and professionals for looking at safety culture and the safety processes. All right, now, okay, you with me so far? All right, so this is what we're going to do. This is why we're going to do it. Now, how do we get this thing done? Here's a very, very simple roadmap. This is what I follow. It's a really can be as is. Remember I told you I'm a quality person, and in TQ and total quality you do a lot of can be as is analysis, and it's a gap analysis. But can be better be pretty darn broad because you're looking at from a culture perspective, so you want to ask yourself from a culture perspective, where are we now and what can be? Can be, I encourage you to benchmark and get out of your industry. Remember I talked about world class. There's a real advantage to thinking broadly because you may find lessons learned from, from aerospace or from the airline industry or from the bottling and beverage industry or from pharma because in many ways safety, and culture is definitely culture. Yes, and I'll get into some nuances in that in a second. But we can learn a lot from each other and broaden out beyond our industry segments. Now, how do we improve? That's the green box there. Then you see, you want to find what's working well and build on it. You want to find your gaps and close those. Involving everybody. We've talked about that. That's the engagement. That's the, remember employees? Employees is everybody, including all the people who run all the processes and including the leaders themselves. Follow a strategy. This is a real tip that I will offer that please don't try to, if any of this sounds interesting, really take a step back and analyze where you are, and I would just advise not to jump in and do something ad hoc. There are no silver bullets. I've been doing this almost 40 years, frankly. You really need to follow a game plan here. Not just this very simple roadmap, but this strategy implementation plan and a change model. And I developed one because I couldn't find one. Now, I was doing this 20 years ago. But I went to 7 of the most popular business models, and I read all of those. And I looked at John Collins, and I looked at John Cotter, and I looked at Larry Bossidy, and I just read book after book after book, and including all the Six Sigma training, and looked at, what do good leaders do, what are good business processes, and how do you really lead and guide change? That's what I was looking for. So I found it in pieces and put it together myself. So I followed a game plan, and it's worked. So, and then how do you know you're working? These are some leading indicators. That's step 4. And number 5, strategically. And again, I just advise, please, no silver bullets, no ad hoc work here. And not to work on symptoms. Remember, if you're doing a really good root cause analysis, you're finding what's broken within the business from a system perspective and a process perspective, not just a symptom perspective. So if this is your consistent roadmap, here are these processes. I told you about them, and I said I would share them with you. This represents 20 years of data gathering that's real. Now take a look at this. There's 24 business processes at work. 11 of them are owned by HR. These are processes, and each one of these, we as safety or safety, health, environmental professionals, we don't own any of these. So we can't change them by ownership. Instead, we have to change and influence them by partnering. And you partner with who owns them. So 11 of these processes which directly impact the success of safety and health and create the culture that you want are owned by our HR professionals. So I hope that HR is a great partner with you. In addition to, of course, you go to the other side and you see operations and service and fleet and all these business functions that are in place that definitely have an impact. But that HR group is critical for us because it gets at who's hired and how are they developed and how are they judged from a successful perspective. And usually HR owns third-party employment. So if you've got resident contractors or third-party employees, HR usually has a very strong role in that. Not just hiring anybody, but hiring those third parties. And it could be resident or non-resident contractors. So usually, again, HR has that. Performance reviews, what's considered important in an organization. We need safety on that very strong. And not just did you make your rate, but did you exhibit from a leader perspective the behaviors that are necessary and expected? And did you enable your organization to be successful? These questions, you can build these in. I've done this, to work with HR professionals and get these very important issues and processes into performance reviews. So you can see the others. I also said that I would share with you when I made a mistake, and I did, with communications. I did not get communications involved early enough or deep enough. And of course I learned and then became very aggressive in teaming with my communications partners and working on a strategic communication plan so that everything that I would like to get done from a safety perspective was built into a strategic communication plan for getting people involved, well, first of all, getting them interested, getting them aware, getting them involved, publicizing great results, launches of formal events, formal programs. All of that can be accelerated, increasing buy-in, increasing motivation and excitement if you use communications for all the power it's got. So here are the processes. A couple of them, the first and the 8th are bolded because I've seen the great impact when these are done very well. Obviously, safety integrated into the way work is done, design, plan, or at least designed and layout, and tool selection, and do we have enough time to do the job, and how well is it planned, and do we have all the equipment that we need? Is equipment in good working order, and do we have all the manpower we need, and all the people that are working with us, or do they have sufficient training? And if they're new, do they have a buddy, or they have some kind of mentoring or some kind of learning period before we just let them out there on their own? Operations owns that. So we need to partner with them. And it's perfectly analogous in service and field work. Number 8, business planning and goal setting. Where do we sit? Where do we fit within the big picture? Are we part of the big picture? What's considered a successful organization from a business perspective? Or are we we're a do this too, don't get anybody hurt? Okay. Obviously that's not acceptable. So these were just 2 examples, but you can see the variety and the depth of where we fit and where we should fit. Now as I tell you that, here's my 5 top tips. Organization-wide, this unifying, motivating culture. What does culture mean to us? What's the vision of what's a successful safety? What are we shooting for? Are we going to have intermediate goals? In my previous organizations, we did, and we allowed, again, there's always a controversy and a big debate of is 0 the right target, and is it deflating when you have one accident in January and you're shot for the year? You know, big debates, right? What we have done, or what I have found successful, is that you do have intermediate goals, and people understand that 0 is the ultimate, of course, but you can't go from, or I'd say it's very difficult to change all the processes and to change the culture and put it into place that's successful, that you'll go from wherever you are to 0 in a year. You know, very, very difficult. That's deflating, I think. So you have your culture, you have what you want to achieve, you have what does that look like, what do people's roles look like, in the end, what do we want to achieve, and how long are we going to give ourselves to get there? Right? Everybody knows. Everything's transparent. One of the things that I've learned, and the first time I did this, I wasn't quite sure if it was going to work or not. I did have my doubts. But I said, you know what, I'm going to do it anyway. And we did, in one organization, it was a very large organization, 118,000 people, over 20, maybe 30 countries. We developed what we considered safety leadership training. And we had 9 different modules, because we had 9 different segments of the organization, and we wanted to tailor them specifically enough for whether it were senior leaders or whether it was plant leaders and site leaders, or whether it was first-line supervisors, it was employees, it was technology, you know, so and support groups. So we had different modules for different people. But what was the same was the core message of accidents are unacceptable here, and we believe they're all preventable, and we're going to really be attacking this, and we're going to be attacking it, and everybody's got a job to do here. And we're going to make sure everybody's got the time and the resources to do this job well. That was a core message within the training, and it resonated through 118,000 people. And it was incredible to see the power of something that was seemingly not so powerful, but it basically turned around a lot of people, especially I'll call, you know, first line leaders and his or her work groups, so that I matter. I got the same core message that my CEO and his leadership staff got. That was very powerful. So organization-wide, be transparent and be frequent in your communications. Again, that strategic communication plan is a great tool for you to use. Second, leadership drive, of course, right? But how well do our leaders really demonstrate? You see here just some thoughts about, are they really caring, or is safety just a number? And oh darn it, we missed our objective. That's not a good leader from a safety perspective. Every injury, and people are even not assets. You see, people are our most important asset. No, they're not. They're people. They're individuals, and somebody got hurt, and that matters. And it's going to be taken seriously. And it's unwavering. And that's where safety becomes a value. It's not a priority of the day. It's not our #1 priority even. It's a value, because those priorities shift and change. And a good leader says, I'm not going to accept the status quo. I'm going to look for where we got some problems and some risks and some exposures, and I'm going to get rid of them. And I'm just going to attack them one at a time. And I'm going to prove it. So the employees are waiting, and they're waiting and watching. And you know this. So a leader says, yeah, safety is really important, but I'm not going to give you any time or resources to work on it. And our budget's really tight, so I can't fix something, so I'm going to put a Band-Aid on. I'll let you know when we get enough money. What does that say? Safety's not of value. Our safety culture is lousy. And yeah, maybe that's true. Maybe we don't have enough money. So you be transparent about it, and you deal with things in phases. And I've done this, and again, you can break up projects in phases and stages, but be transparent and truthful with people, and it goes a long way to get that third point about employees engaged meaningfully. You recognize them, and you respect them, and you ask their opinions. That's a hallmark of a culture. I have that here about global nuances. Two of the companies I've worked for have been extremely large. In fact, American Standard I worked for, fabulous company, great leader, Mr. Poses. We had 80% of our population was outside the United States. So if we had a focus or a process or attention that was US based, we lost 80% of our population's interest. Total disrespect, I believe, to show them that. So I switched it entirely. Right? We became globally recognized and created councils that were global so that every business and every region of the world was recognized and heard. Because what's going to work in one may not work in another. Now, as I say that, you know, there's different traditions, different histories, different views of leaders and worker roles, different views of respect to management, different risk tolerances. Some areas of the world are very risk. They don't mind taking a risk. In fact, it's kind of macho to take a risk. Different views of women, different political views, different economic views. All of that plays into how are you going to be designing this culture, recognizing these, and that's what you do. You understand it, respect it, and you recognize it. And you build it into the culture. You don't ignore it, and it does not change your overall number one. You're still going where you're going, period. We have a goal, we have a direction, but how we get there, we've got some flexibility. And we have respect for our different global operations and people. And how we do it, we got some flexibility and we're going to tailor it, and yes, but we're not changing number one. We are going to go where we're going. That carries another very strong message because it gets into number four. We're going to integrate and align safety in those business processes. I will be very honest with you, this is a lot of work. But it is the most important thing that you can do because it means you're engaging the entire organization. Actually, you're showing respect for the entire organization because every function has their job to do, or else they wouldn't be there. And saying, okay, how can we do a win-win here? I appreciate, I recognize what you do for this corporation or this company. This is what I need to do if I'm a safety leader. How can we partner on this? Do you see how much we impact each other? Can we get this done together? And I'll tell you, in doing this so many years, I've never had a no. I've got a, gee, Cathy, I'm not sure what to do. And I say, that's my job. I'm going to sit next to you and we're going to figure this out together. And in the end, remember how we started out with all those business values? In the end, this is where you get that enormous business value. Because now the organization is running with efficiencies and productivities because we're getting 1, 2, and 3 done above here, and you begin to churn this organization. And I'll tell you, it's one of the most fascinating things I've ever seen, and it's a real joy to experience this. So, do your job. This is a lot of work, but you change your view. If you agree and see the power of 1, 2, 3, and 4 as the elements of a successful culture within your company, you're not a cop anymore. You're not looking at blaming people, and you're not looking at more procedures and more training and higher accountabilities, and this is how we're just going to keep bashing people, and this is how we're going to make sure there's no accidents. No, no, no. We are coaches, and we are teachers, and we are builders of safety. And where does it fit into the company? And I'm going to make it for you something I put together, clear, easy, and desirable. It looks really simple, and it is in concept, but again, it takes some time and some effort here. I'm going to make it clear. I'm going to help people understand what's necessary, why is it necessary, a timeline, their advantage, my advantage, recognizing, again, those geographic cultures. They have to be taken into account. So this is where we're going, this is why, and this is a general roadmap of what needs to get done. Now, it's going to make it easy. I'm not going to make it complicated with a bunch of multi-page checklists and you know, I'll call it vanilla training. You may need training, but it's going to be really hands-on, targeted training in how we get results. Processes are going to get built If we're successful, we build safety and health into these processes, they begin to feed each other, they begin to work, it's seamless, it's easy because it's not I do my job and then I do safety. Instead, I do my job safely. And that's my job, whether I'm looking at HR and risk management or procurement or new employees or transferred employees or recognition, reward, or discipline or any of that, everything is built in. And then once it's built in, the two important ways to make sure it's built in is that it's also desirable. So this gets at recognition, reward, and discipline. I mean, of everything I said, disciplines, of course, it still has its place. Employees are still held responsible for following procedures, of course. But do we build the other side in strong enough? Is it great recognition and reward from our leaders? Is it in their bonuses and AIP and whatever incentives you have in place in your business? Is safety a part of it? And not only did you make the rate, did you have the number of accidents you want to, but are you building in all this 1, 2, 3, and 4 above it? If you do that, that's the little recipe of getting all of this done. There's my tips. There's 20 years in doing only safety, almost 40 in doing health, safety, and environment. So there you are for tips to traps. And I guess it's not surprising that the traps are kind of the opposite of the tips. But for us, we have a really important leadership role here. I hope there's no cops out there. No blaming, no discipline, no training, no procedures. Instead, are you assisting the leaders? Are you assisting the employees? Are you engaging them? Are you really asking them what's their opinion? Are you communicating information back to them? Is it easy for people? That really, whether we like it or not, it falls on our lap. It's on our shoulders to make things as easy as possible. And why not, right? It's got to be done. We know safety well. We know what we're really trying to achieve. So you work with the organizational leaders and employees to make it happen. A good leader yourself, so that you're working collectively and collaboratively and positively with your own people, if you have a staff, and then with the organization. Are you giving them the roadmap and the plan? Are you strategic, or are you working on nits and gnats and tactics and symptoms? That's not helping the organization. They're going to spin, and they're probably going to get frustrated because you'll work on things, but you're not going to make the big steps forward. And finally, are you the partner you need to be? Safety is not the most important thing, and I learned this. I went in at one time, and so safety, safety, safety. I learned I was siloing my own job, and that was a serious mistake very early in my career. In my zeal, right, to have everything done well from a safety perspective, I needed to back up and say, no, I am part of a business. Safety is part of a well-run business. I am not a purist. I am an integrated partner with the way the business operates. It's my job to help the business run well and safely. It's a different viewpoint. From the business itself, here's this integration piece, and the second one, maybe perhaps one of the most important, is really helping our leaders not to do the blame game, and to build processes, whether it's incident investigation, root cause analysis, recognition reward, all the different processes that look at what really happened here, and I'm not going to blame you. Again, in that really rare circumstance, maybe it is, and if so, hey, then you've done your job and you've looked at all the supporting processes, and you say, well, everything's absolutely perfect, nothing else to fix, can't have another explanation. Now, that's also not to say if somebody violates, something that's really critical safety rule, lockout, tagout, for instance, they disable a lockout or, an interlock or something. That's a really serious discussion. But you still want to know why they did it, because my supervisor told me to. That's a good reason not to fire, at least not initially, the employee, right? You don't fire them and then say, well, my supervisor told me to do it. You got another problem on your hands. So from a business perspective, are we helping our leaders make all those right assessments and right decisions? So with that, I'm going to stop. I'm going to hand this, I'm sorry. Next steps, be prepared. Find your allies. These are the business levels and functions that they're savvy and they understand what you're trying to do. Be patient, but please be firm. Really try to resist. People are going to come at you with silver bullets. No, we don't, you know, you listen, but it's not you're going to change your strategy based on something somebody picked up somewhere. And yes, sometimes you're going to be unpopular, but you know what? So what? You got a job to do, and you want to do it well, and you want to engage everybody, but you know, eventually most people see what you're trying to do. So with that, now I'm going to hand it over to Hannah.
Yes, thank you, Cathy, for this informative presentation. Before we proceed with the question and answer session, I would like to inform you that PCB provides training and certification services for OSAS 18001, Introduction, Foundation, Lead Implementer, and Lead Auditor. OSAS 18001 helps you in reducing your workplace hazards and also protecting the safety, health, and welfare of the people engaged in your workplace. A PCB certificate will demonstrate your dedication in implementing and managing these processes and frameworks, and most importantly, you will be recognized worldwide. For more information, please visit our website www.pcb.com/training. Now, without further ado, we will read some of the questions from attendees regarding today's presentation. The first question is, how do you manage a leader who doesn't accept the required change the business needs and further drives behaviors that negate your efforts?
Okay. Well, the first thing I would do, as you may suspect, is that I need to understand what's going on with the leader. What's impacting that leader? I'll say what the whippums are, what's in it for me, how are they held accountable, what's going on in the business. Is productivity down? They got customer problems, they got quality problems, they got productivity problems. I need to know what's going on with that leader. So that would be the first thing. Then, you know, not accepting the changes. And again, please, I give people the benefit of the doubt before I make other kinds of assessments. So again, I want to know what's going on with the leader. I also want to know if they say they're not accepting the required changes. I need to know why not. In my experience, sometimes is that that leaders resist because they don't know what to do. And if they don't know what to do, I take that as that's my fault. Because I didn't give them enough information or enough training or enough tools or enough coaching so that they're having difficulty. So are they having difficulty because they don't know what to do? Also, are they having difficulty because it may be uncomfortable for them? That's different than they don't know what to do. If they're uncomfortable, it may be a cultural issue, and that could be a geographic culture. So I don't know the person who asked that where you're from, but there are regions, geographic regions of the world where a manager, management has a certain level of authority and image, and they're really not comfortable talking with the employees or engaging the employees. So I would need to know, again, what's in the way. And once you find that out, you may need to create a burning platform. And if one doesn't exist, make it up. So that there's, you know, is there, I mean, not make up the data, but I mean, create one of you know, safety, performance, or injuries, or costs of what's going on in this particular department, or this particular business, or this particular you know, operation. You know, what's wrong here, including maybe employee feedback. So you may go after, can you hold some skip level meetings and get some employee feedback of what's working and not working. So now you've done your data, right? So first, and you know, find out kind of what's going on there from a data perspective. I would really spend time with the leader, finding out what's going on in his or her world, and why are they having difficulty accepting the changes. That's how I would address it.
Okay, thank you, Cathy, for your answer. So the second question that one of the attendees asked is, when employees of an organization have lost confidence in safety culture, they say that we are already spoken of this, we already used to do this way, how can this resistance be rectified?
Okay. That's actually really great. The other question was very good too. I've experienced this one as well, and basically you have to prove it, and that's what I did. There was a very, I'd say, a bad taste in many of the employees' mouths of, yeah, you know, I've raised this before, but nobody listens to me. I say, okay, we're going to prove it, and we're going to start changing things. So the first thing I would do there is, again, I would go right back to them and say, what have you said before, and what have you seen done, if anything, and then say, would you be willing to help fix something? Now, from a safety perspective. Now, this comes back to you, because what you can do is you can give them, I'll call it some skill training to identify some hazards, and then say, okay, within our work area, we're going to be looking at these together, and we're going to be dedicating our time to be fixing what you say. I've developed something called a safety Kaizen, and it's off of a lean tool. That's called a Kaizen event, but I made it very focused on safety, and that's what we did. So that proves, look, we're serious about this, we're serious about you, we're serious about what you think. We want to know what's in your way. In order to do your job safely, we're going to fix it. In most safety Kaizens, they usually take a day or two, but you can fix always over 50%. I mean, I've never encountered something below 50% of that. I mean, my gosh, you know, that's incredible proof, right? So that, you know, we've done this before, okay, I hear you. We're going to be willing to make some changes. Will you participate with us in a safety Kaizen? And you need to go to your leaders too. I don't know the status of your leaders. Do they have that open door? Are they, I'll use the term walking the talk, but much more important, you know, what are they doing to demonstrate themselves that safety is important? So again, I would ask you, or I would do some more data, find out what's going on from the employees themselves, and see if they'd be willing to participate in something. I know you have to get approval for that, maybe from the supervisor or the site leader. But and then the other thing you might do is ask them if they would be willing to be like safety advocates, or would they be willing to be on a safety committee for something that they think is really necessary and really important, based on the feedback that you got when you asked them. So again, you're getting them directly involved. If, you know, we hear you, has got to be the message. And we're going to be doing something about what you say. So those are the two ideas that come to mind for that situation.
Okay, thank you, Cathy. Now we'll proceed with the third question. What can be a best approach for organizations where safety culture is desired, still production money prioritized?
Okay. If I think I understand that right, that people, they want a safety culture, but it still looks like production over safety?
Yeah.
Okay. First thing I would do is kind of follow what I've shared with the group here, is really define, have you really defined what a safety culture is for you and your organization? Do you know what it looks like? Do you know how long you're going to give yourself to get there? What are your goals in this? Do your leaders understand this? Have you, like, you do your homework first and you come up with this, and then you go to your leaders and you say, you know, this is what we need. So hopefully the leaders are already on board with wanting this, because you said a safety culture is desired. This is what it means if you're really serious about a safety culture. And then, and one of the things that has to change is safety has to become a value. And leaders, you have to be demonstrating this. Mary, I just shared with you a couple things. But it's really a coaching session, education session for the leaders. And then remember what I shared with you, clear, easy, desirable. So now you have to make it easy for them. If a safety culture is desired, but it's still productivity over safety, I look for the processes that are broken. Like, something is still broken that's not raising safety up and that's still allowing production over it. So something is not working within the organization, the processes that guide that. So maybe it's ops, maybe it's the site leader, him or herself, you know, or maybe safety itself isn't risen high enough to become a value because it's not integrated, or it's not seen as the value and the power that it can bring. It's still seen as a compliance issue. If that's the case, again, that education back to the leaders, that needs to go back to them, and then you need to work with whoever owns operations, probably, you know, ops and engineering and maintenance. So it needs to go to them to integrate safety, so that safety does become part of the organization. And remember HR. Remember, there's 24 processes I shared. HR owns 11, right? One of those is recognition reward and basically making your numbers. So you need, so where in the HR world does the, I'll call it the annual goals or the MBO, managed by objectives, where does safety fit in there? So is safety high enough up that it's even on the screen of people? So you need to build it in. So build it. That's the discussion we just had about, yes, it's on the screen. Yes, I need to make it clear, easy, and desirable, which means I may need to do some work on the easy side to make it easy for people. So I'm beginning to raise safety up, not only in its understanding, but that it's easier to do. And I'm raising safety up and maybe production down, or at least it's going to be production equals safety. And it's that within the recognition system, so that yes, I made my productivity numbers and customer satisfaction and quality, and I made my safety numbers, and that's the package of which I am measured against, not just productivity, customer satisfaction, and quality. So I would attack it in those three ways.
Thank you, Cathy. So another question that one of the attendees asked is, can you share with us some ideas around leading indicators?
Sure. The leading indicators, or you might think of them as critical X's, I don't know if you know, that's like a Six Sigma term. The leading indicators, the best way is that they're proactive, they're only few in number, they're specific. Hold on a second. Sorry. Sorry, excuse me for that. Leading indicators. They're specific, they're few in number, they're proactive, they're easy to do. Something like something as simple as closure of corrective actions from audits. That's a leading indicator, because you're looking at, you can be looking at, I guess there's also two types of leading indicators. One can be transactional, did I do something, yes or no? And the other is something very specific. So from a leading indicator perspective, we would have, or others in my past, I've had closure of corrective actions. Leading indicators should also be based on what you really want to achieve. So for instance, I shared with you some of the things about getting employees involved and finding and fixing risks within their area. You might have a leading indicator for the first line leaders. So first line leader, did you identify the top risk in your area and get your employees involved and how to fix it? Now you can see all the variety of things that's achieving. You're getting ownership by the first line leader, you're getting the employees directly involved, and you're getting a risk taken care of. So three wins from that one action, but that you could use that as a leading indicator, and I've actually used that. You could use leading indicators for integration, which I've done. That safety and health is integrated into, out of those 24, we identified 5 or 6. So leading indicator is, was it identified, and then from a perspective of the process owner, has it been effective? So those are some examples of some leading indicators I've done. But they're all around actions and behaviors. They're not, I say, and they lead to a result, because the result would be a lagging indicator. So you're looking at actions and behaviors that are targeted, and you target them based on what you want to work on the most.
Okay, thank you, Cathy, for answering all these questions. But because of time limitation, all the remaining questions will have to be answered via email by Cathy. So once again, thank you, Cathy, for this presentation. It was an honor having you as a presenter. I would also like to thank all the attendees for taking the time out of their busy schedules and joining us. Please be reminded that this webinar will be recorded and posted in our YouTube channel and also in the SlideShare account. We hope you enjoyed our webinar, and we wish you a wonderful day.
Okay, thank you very much. It was a great honor for me to be on here, and again, if anybody has any questions, I will be responding to all those questions by email. If you would like to contact me, this is my contact information. So thank you again and have a safe day.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.